Everybody, again, this is Bob Milam from the Utah High School Football Officials Association with a quick update for training on our player equipment presentation given in this year's rules clinic. We've updated it through the first week of games and the first interaction with coaches to try and get you up to speed on the enforcement of this new player equipment, or not new player equipment, but of the player equipment rule. So let's start with a quick overview of the important facts. We're going to cover things that we covered in the previous presentation and added a few more things for you to take note of. First of all, realize that Rules 1.5 violations of which fall into two main types of categories. The first is illegal equipment, and this one results in a 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct penalty assessed to the head coach for each and every incident of illegal equipment that is found. Two of these will result in ejection of the head coach, and then when a new coach takes over, if more violations are found, that will go to whoever is now coaching the team. So they can get an unlimited number of these. The second type of violation is for legal mandatory equipment, which is either missing or improperly worn. And this will result in an official's timeout and the offending player to be removed from the game for at least one play. They may return once the issue has been corrected. They cannot be bought back in by a timeout. So we got two different types of violations here, one far more serious than the other. So let's take a look at at how the rule breaks this down. First, let's review equipment that's mandatory that may be missing. Now, you might also say, well, why are we covering mandatory equipment? Because there are problems with pants, knee pads, and jerseys reaching the top of the pant, and they have to be tucked in if they're longer than that. Undershirts as well need to be tucked in. Mandatory equipment is covered in Rule 151, so be sure to consult those rules. They also talk about things like wearing a helmet. That's an important part of the mandatory equipment. But these are the three items that we have the most problem with, so please go read these three rule references that you see here. Second, we have auxiliary approved equipment. This includes forearm pads, gloves, tapes, wraps, and braces that are approved to be auxiliary equipment with the proper use and mandated safety precautions. In addition, the UHSAA has approved the use of a device called the Q collar. This is a collar that's worn around the neck. It is made of plastic, and it is designed to reduce the impact of traumatic head injury and traumatic brain injury. There is an opening in the front, as you can see in the diagram here, the product diagram, that makes it different than a simple sweatband around the neck. So this is the approved device, and it's called a Q collar. Failure to wear any of this mandatory equipment or auxiliary approved equipment as designed by the manufacturer will result in a player being removed until the correction is made. The illegal equipment is covered in Rule 153. Now, there's several sections of this. The first related to the game uniform. This includes altered jerseys. Those that have been stuck in place with duct tape are considered altered. Those that are tied have knots tied in them or had the bottoms cut away, or tearaway jerseys, any sticky substances that are on the players' uniforms, and patterns, multiple colors, or symbols that occur on the sleeves being worn on either the arms or the legs are considered illegal equipment. Also, this is the important one, all adornments other than the two that I've listed here in green, all adornments are considered illegal equipment of all type. This includes bandanas with the backs that hang down, sweatbands worn in any other way other than what we see here, and it also includes the Osgood sweatbands for tendonitis that Osgood Slaughter, thank you, I'm sorry for the confusion there. The Osgood Slaughter bands that are worn below the knee, they simply must be covered by tape, wrap, or another type of a sleeve or knee pad to keep them from being exposed. If they're exposed, they're considered an adornment. So please get the trainers to cover those with some type of material. Then the players can wear those to prevent pain in the patellar tendon. But other than that, one towel and sweatbands that are on the wrist only that extend to a maximum of 3 inches beyond the base of the thumb. Those are the only two adornments that are allowed by the rules. All others are considered illegal. Article B relates to pads and padding. And here, any hard or unyielding items on the arms, things like elbow braces that aren't properly padded, and other types of unyielding items on the arms must be fully padded according to the stipulation in the rule book. Also, altered knee braces and any that are worn on the outside of the pants by offensive or defensive linemen. They must be unaltered and worn under the pants where the pants will cover them. Also, back pads which cannot be fully covered by the jerseys are considered to be illegal equipment. If they can pull the jersey down to cover the back pad, then it is not illegal. If they cannot, then they need to change jerseys and find one that does before they can play. Simple as that. All of these are considered illegal equipment. Now, that's not all. There's other illegal equipment that we need to recognize, and they're listed here in Rule 153C. Any electronic communication devices that communicate with the sideline through electronic uses into the helmet, an earpiece or other type of device like that. An eye shade, meaning the grease paint or the eye black that is not a single stroke or includes any writing at all, or if it extends to any other area of the face other than the area immediately below each eye. The eye shield, the helmet visor that is not completely clear. Jewelry except for medical or religious medals if taped down. They have to be taped to the body underneath the padding and underneath the jerseys. However, if a medical device is worn on the wrist, a medical alert bracelet or other device, it must be taped down, but it can be visible to the personnel who would attend to an injured player that has a medical condition and is required to wear one. Any play cards that are not worn on the wrist is considered illegal equipment. Headwear that extends beyond or below the helmet. Messages, writing, or symbols of any kind, anywhere on any part of the uniform, pads, or body that is visible once the jersey is properly in place is considered to be illegal, and any equipment not worn as intended by the manufacturer is also considered illegal. Penalty for all illegal equipment, every violation of which is a 15-yard unsportsmanlike assessed to the head coach. Here's some examples of illegal equipment. So as I cursor my cursor around the screen here, I'm going to start in the upper left with the do-rag. The bandana with the tails hanging out, the bottom or the back of it is considered to be illegal equipment. Next, we see Deion Sanders, number 21 here, with potentially 3 pieces of illegal equipment on. On his arm, he has a sweatband that is clearly above the 3-inch limit from the thumb. He's also wearing a sweatband around his neck. That is also illegal. And if his bandana extends below his helmet, which it has in other photos that I've seen of him, it would be considered illegal in high school football. Looking to his left, we have some example of knee braces that are not worn under the pants. These would be considered to be illegal equipment. So the lineman must cover them before he comes into the game. He's got to pull the pants down over the top of these knee braces. Down below him, number 1 here in the blue, is wearing a play card on his belt. This is illegal equipment. Moving along just next to him, the Ohio State quarterback who's just released a pass. You can see he has writing and a symbol on his wristband. We don't care, the rules don't care, I should say, what type of a symbol it is. It could be religious, it could be as innocuous and innocent as the Michigan's quarterback smiley face that he's written on the back of his hand. Both are considered illegal equipment, adornments, and they need to be removed before the player can play. If they're found wearing this during the game, that will be a 15-yard unsportsmanlike assessed to the head coach. Same thing with Tim Tebow's eye black, which are pieces of tape that have a scripture reference on them. Again, we don't care what the references are. If it has writing of any kind, it's considered to be illegal. Just above him, we have a player with a neck bandana with a trailer sticking out of it. This is also illegal, as is the eye black on the player who fancies himself to be a professional wrestler of some type. So this eye black is illegal. Also, below him, number 7 in the black shirt with the illegal visor and all of these armbands. Each of these armbands is illegal, as well as his visor, which is not clear. Below him, number 56 has jewelry on. It's a religious medal, but it's not taped to his body. That's illegal equipment. Moving over to number 1 in the blue on the upper right here, we see a visor, which might be illegal, as well as several patellar tendon bands, which are not covered and are not considered legal equipment in high school football for that reason. Also, number 23 for Utah State has a number of these sweatbands on his arms. And lastly, number 17 in the lower right has an elbow brace with hard, unyielding surfaces that is not padded or covered according to the way the rule book specifies. So realize all of these are examples of illegal equipment. All right, let's look and continue on to improperly worn equipment. This is a little bit different than the illegal equipment we've just covered. Improperly worn equipment includes things like jerseys that don't cover the pads. This could be a back pad, this could be the arms on the shoulder pads, or this nature. The jerseys sometimes get dislodged through use, so this is improperly worn equipment. The rules specify that the jersey must cover the pads. If it becomes improperly positioned through use, it needs to be replaced or corrected before the player can continue. Knees uncovered by pads or pants, and we will have more on this subject momentarily, but we need to have players trying to cover their knees. The chin track that's unhooked, the face mask not attached properly, the jersey or shirt not tucked in. This item is important because it's imperative that the umpire be able to verify visually quickly that players have their hip pads and tailbone pads in proper place and functioning as intended. Finally, the last piece of this is a mouthpiece that is not worn as intended by the manufacturer, not being worn properly. So, the exception to this part of the rule is that it is not a violation if it's directly attributed to a foul by the opponents. So, if somebody fouled and caused this to happen, we will allow them to correct it without further penalty. That's the exception. So improperly worn equipment will result in a player being removed until correction is made. We're going to cover the knees in just a minute here in more detail, but let me show you some examples of improperly worn equipment. In the upper left, we have an Ohio State player that clearly has pants that don't cover his knees, and also his mouthpiece is out. So he's not wearing the mouthpiece properly. This is improperly worn equipment. Same thing with our player in the green to the right of him that's about to field this kick. His knees are uncovered because he hasn't pulled his pants down. Looks like he has a better chance to be compliant than does the player on the upper left, just because of the way the pants are tailored. And we've got to take this into account when we enforce these rules. Next to him, there's a player with chin straps that are not attached in all 4 points. That is improperly worn equipment, as is the back pad that is not covered by the jersey. The jersey has ridden up over the back of the back pad. That is considered improperly worn equipment. Next is the Florida State player with double mouthpieces. I'm not sure why he needs 2 brightly colored mouthpieces. This is clearly an adornment, and it's clearly making a fashion statement, and this is to be removed from the high school game. You're allowed to wear 1 mouthpiece, and you got to use it properly. The last one is our player with the jersey untucked. Down here, this untucked jersey, again, does not allow us to assess whether all of his equipment is properly in place. Therefore, he must tuck that jersey in from play to play or ask his teammates to do so. Or he will be asked to leave the game until he can find a more permanent solution than simply allowing the shirt to come out. All right, let's move ahead. So we're going to go more on the knees here momentarily, and we'll speak to this issue specifically. So how or when are we to call these violations? Well, the first opportunity to identify them is at the pregame coaches' meetings. The referees need to ask, are all your players legally and properly equipped? And then, following that confirmation from the coach, the crew should attempt to aid the coach to ID any problems pregame, bring them to the coach's attention so that he can address and correct them before the game starts and he's placed in jeopardy. This is the only opportunity for a warning over the course of the season. Do it during your pregame meeting. Make sure you're out on the field in time to meet with the teams and spend your time on the field verifying that the players are legally and properly equipped and are not wearing illegal equipment of any kind. During the game, if they try to enter, number one, don't let the player enter and try to become a player. If you know he's illegally equipped, point it out to the coach and try to prevent him from entering the game. If he does, and you don't see it until he has entered, then once this substitute enters and takes a position and the snap is imminent, then you halt play and either remove for the improperly worn equipment or penalize for the illegal equipment each and every time. In either case, whether it's improperly worn or illegal equipment, the player needs to be removed for the game for at least one play. All right, let's talk a little bit further here. This next section is the update that only applies to the issue about covering the knees, which is part of improperly worn equipment. This is not considered illegal equipment unless there's a specific thing missing, and we'll cover that in a second. We have to have and maintain throughout the year zero tolerance for all illegal equipment and missing mandatory equipment. And that's what we're going to talk about with these knee pads. So you have to know the difference. What is considered illegal and what is considered improperly worn or missing mandatory equipment. So let's go back and look at these two people with their knee pad issues. Let's take a look at this concerning their knees. So number one, the player on the left and the player on the right both have their knees exposed. One player, it looks like the Ohio State player on the left, probably couldn't pull his pants down to cover his knees if he tried. He would have to expose so much at the other end of those pants that you don't want to go there. So the other player on the right might be able to cover those knees with a little bit of effort. So what we want you to do is to assess the attitude of those involved, the players and the coaches and the trainers. Assess the attitude you're presented with when you point out these violations. Is the attitude one of cooperation or apology? We're doing our best to get this corrected. We got these pants from the manufacturer. We can't order new ones until the school board approves our budget. On and on and on. There's a number of different indicators that you can use to assess the attitude of the coaching staff. Is it cooperative or apologetic, or is it belligerent? It's like, we're wearing these damn pants whether you like it or not, ref, and this is ridiculous. Why are you worried about this? I thought you needed to call holding during this game. Why are you worried about this stuff? Any of that belligerent attitude, that's what we want to get out of the game. So if it's belligerent, when you assess the attitude, pointing out these violations, then just call it and penalize it, and we'll talk about what you do with it. If it's cooperative, apologetic, or they're frustrated with trying to get things to work because they're under an awful lot of pressure as well, then work with them. Don't be quick to penalize. Ask them to do what they can. Have your players pull the pants down rather than hiking them up. Let's see a little bit of effort here. give us an indication that you're trying to be cooperative or are apologetic and recognize these violations. That's what we're looking for. Those two different attitudes. And that's when we want it penalized and when we want cooperation. Hopefully this is common sense to you guys and it makes sense. But let's cover it a little bit further. Once you assess the attitude, then you have to determine, is the equipment violation because something is missing or because it's out of place? If it's missing, we are not going to allow this player to play because he has no pads at all in his knees. So don't let him come into the game. He's not allowed to play with missing mandatory equipment, and knee pads are mandatory as shoulder pads and a helmet are. Second, if it's out of place, request correction. Then see point number 1 about their attitude. Are they trying to comply? If they are, work with them. If they're not trying to comply, that's when you're going to pull them out of the game and ask them to correct it before they're let back in the game. So look for that compliant attitude. Again, concerning the knees here, do they have a plan in place to correct it? Maybe it's going to take years to correct this at their school district or their particular school. But is there some type of a plan in place? We've ordered some pads temporarily to cover the knees. We've borrowed pads from the wrestling team to cover their knees. Is there a plan to do this in the interim until they can afford to get the uniforms correctly? Are they trying to comply? If they are, go back and see point 1 on attitude. So go back and review that point. We're looking for cooperation, apology, and an attempt to comply with the rule. So if you have to resort to calling the penalties, remember all illegal equipment, whether they're trying to correct it or not, that's the stuff we need to penalize. So let's get all of the illegal equipment, the eye black, the writing on the arms, the bandanas, the do-rags, all of that stuff needs to get taken out of the game. And any ejections that result need to be reported to the UHSAA through the online ejection form. The USHA should also be notified of any team-wide or school-wide uniform or equipment issues that exist. The school approaches you and says, "We can't fix the problem. We know there's a problem." Just report that to the UHSA so that they can follow up with the timeline that's appropriate to get this issue solved. And realize that the USHAA will be the one to set the time frame for future actions, and it will be based on several factors which we have zero control over. So please be aware that this issue may be bigger than the game you're involved in. The bottom line, remove and penalize all the illegal equipment that you see. Remove all players that are missing any mandatory equipment. Don't allow anyone to enter the field if they're missing the mandatory equipment. But for now, use common sense and work with cooperative schools regarding covering the knees where the knee pads are present, but just not in the right place. That's the one we're looking for cooperation on. Report all equipment issues and related ejections. Notify the UHSA for school-wide issues. And finally, do not be a detective out there looking for tiny little minor violations. That's not who we are, and that's not who we want to be. So let's finally review the two main types of violations again. Illegal equipment results in the 15-yard penalty to the head coach for every single incident and will lead to his ejection. Legal equipment improperly worn or missing mandatory equipment results in the removal of the player for at least one play, but they may return once the issue has been corrected. So that's our presentation today. Good luck and have a great rest of your season. Questions, please forward them to me, and good luck to everyone.